Alright, so episode 4 of the 4th season of Strange New Worlds just dropped, and the first thing to say is, yep, the whiplash continues. This week, the show pulls its boldest visual stunt yet, because after a dinosaur planet, a haunted ship, and a drunken pleasure resort, episode 4 drops the whole ensemble into a black and white film noir. A Case of Chiaroscuro is Star Trek doing Casablanca, and whether you liked or hated the episode, you can't deny that it's probably Rebecca Romijn's best hour on the show. So, time for the recap, and then get into what the ending means, before we finally talk about just where we think this season is going next. Let's dive in. The recap. Star Trek goes film noir. First things first, I have to give the show real credit, because the black and white thing isn't just a gimmick or random choice. Una, Mbenga, and Uhura are on a covert shuttle mission to recover a broken Federation probe that's drifted into Klingon space. The catch is that the whole star system is dominated by a sun whose radiation messes with how color is perceived. So everything, the crew, the planet, every last person on it, appears in black and white, which means there's an actual science-y in-universe reason to shoot the hour in monochrome, which is a very Star Trek way to justify a stylistic swing like this. Also, it looks absolutely gorgeous. I mean, disorienting, sure, but beautiful. They manage to grab the probe, but a Klingon ship shows up nearby, forcing the OA team to duck down onto Matar 12, a Klingon-occupied planet where they're definitely not supposed to be, given the Federation isn't meant to have any presence in this area at all. And when we drop into this world, we see it's pure noir. Fedoras, sharp coats, smoky bars, plus there's refugees trying to escape, and Klingon collaborators who can be identified by silver cuffs on their sleeves. This planet is ruled through a mix of physical brutality and a wide surveillance system that restricts even simple things like where ordinary citizens can go. Think Casablanca plus Sin City plus 1984. Then we get to the twist here. Una turns out to be a dead ringer for a local woman named Navette, who happens to be playing both sides. On one hand, she's a top lieutenant to the Klingon overlord, and then on the other, she's secretly the leader of the underground resistance that's been smuggling families out of the occupation. Unfortunately, Navette has already been poisoned by an associate by the time Una lands on the planet, which means Una never meets her, and also means that Una has to step in without any prep and impersonate a woman who was somehow implicitly trusted by the enemy while running the rebellion against them. The Klingon colonizers are led by Kor, played by Demore Barnes, and if you recognize that name, congrats, because that is indeed the same Kor we saw in the original series, who was the very first Klingon ever introduced in the Star Trek universe. He's a younger version, obviously, and is a member of the Imperial family who comes by his warmongering honestly. He's smooth, he's brutal, and he wants to shut down the planet's airspace and strip the Matarans of any power at all. The strongest scenes in the whole episode are Una and Kor circling each other, because it's seriously nail-biting, and at no point do we actually understand how much he knows. Later, he tortures Uhura, and she slips by referencing green trees, in a world where nobody has ever seen the color green, and I swear I winced, waiting for their cover story to crash and burn. Also, back aboard the Enterprise, there's a B-plot with an increasingly paranoid La'an, convinced that the probe they just retrieved has been sabotaged somehow. The ending explained, what happens and what it means. So in the back half of this episode, the noir plot kicks into high gear. The Resistance plan hinges on a proximity detonator that fires an electromagnetic pulse to overload Klingon security across the city. The problem is that the device is basically a suicide mission. The moment it crosses any Klingon checkpoint, it instantly alerts its own location, so whoever's carrying it is immediately exposed. Navette was poisoned before she could ever get her hands on it, so the job falls to Una, who's still playing the part of the dead stranger. The complication is the same resentful associate who poisoned her, because he figures out that Una is an imposter, and he's pretty excited that he gets to kill Navette twice. But Una flips the board on him. Instead of getting caught with the detonator himself, she plants it on him, so that he's the one who lights up the moment he crosses the checkpoint. The plan works out. The EMP cripples the Klingon D7 cruiser sitting in low orbit, which knocks about 80% of its systems out. And this is where the Enterprise plot comes into play, because Scotty had rigged a makeshift navigational buoy off that D7 earlier, specifically so that Ortegas, who's piloting the shuttle, would know the exact moment it was safe to swing back in and grab the team. With the Klingon ship dead in the water, Pike gives the all clear and the away team manages to escape. As they lift off and leave Matar behind, color literally bleeds back into the frame. It's a lovely shot, and it makes me think of how people must have first felt when television came into color. One of the Resistance fighters tells Una that even though Navette is gone, Una herself has become their inspiration now, and they'll find their own way forward from here. So what does it all actually mean? Underneath the hats and the smoke, this whole episode is about Una's identity. A lot of her journey has been about that actually. Just notice how easily she can pretend to be someone else. It's not an accident, and it's not new to her. Pretending to be someone else is second nature to Una, because she had done it before, with her own life on the line. Una has spent years of her life as an Illyrian hiding what she truly was, passing as human just to survive within a federation that had outlawed people like her. The episode reminds us that she still never made peace with her family's choice to hide instead of standing and fighting alongside their fellow Illyrians when the Federation came to her colony all those years ago. But at least here, the hiding is finally in service of something. She risks everything for total strangers, strikes a real blow against an occupying tyranny, and walks away having been somebody's leader. It's the show pushing Una one more step away from being the perpetual number one and toward believing she belongs in a captain's chair. Now for the honest part, because I'm always honest with y'all, the premise leans on an amazingly unlikely coincidence. I mean, come on. Una just happens to stumble upon the one planet in the galaxy where her exact double lives, and the show never explains why this doppelganger exists. It's the episode's biggest weakness. Like, sure, it's gorgeous to look at, a little thin underneath. To be fair though, the episode seems to know this because Mbenga basically shrugs and jokes that in a universe this big, the real surprise is that we don't run into our own doubles more often. The B-plot isn't the best idea either, since La'an's Hunt leads her to Nurse Chapel, who'd wiped a recording of a Federation medical ship illegally crossing the border to answer a distress call, covering for friends. La'an chooses not to report her, a common thing in this show, and a closing scene with Pike felt a little too ominous, as he tells La'an she knows where to find him if anything else troubling turns up. What's next? Level 5 Transporter Accident Predictions. Okay, now for the episode a lot of you have been waiting for since Comic-Con. Next Thursday, August 20th, we get Level 5 Transporter Accident. And here's the official synopsis. A transporter malfunction turns most of the crew into puppets while Spock fights to reclaim the ship. Yes, this is the puppet episode. Star Trek with Muppets. These are the ones made with the legendary Jim Henson's Creature Shop, the one they teased at the San Diego Comic-Con by bringing out an actual Captain Pike puppet. After dystopian, horror, comedy, and noir, the show's next big genre swing of the season is full-on Muppets in space. And I am mega excited for it, my dudes. So let me lay out what we actually know and where I think this goes. The core premise is about a transporter accident, a level 5 one, which in Trek terms signals a serious complex malfunction, which converts most of the crew into felt puppet versions of themselves. Crucially, Spock stays flesh and blood, which makes sense. He's often been the last man standing, and in this case, he remains the one sane, non-puppet officer left to fix the disaster, and as the synopsis puts it, reclaim the ship. Ethan Peck has said in interviews that he ends up talking to and even kissing puppets, so I'm wondering if there's gonna be a Sleeping Beauty angle here. True found family love wakes up the crew? I'm just trying to picture Spock trying to keep his Vulcan dignity while surrounded by googly-eyed plush versions of his crewmates. I'm already laughing. So Spock specifically stays human, and I really don't think this is random. This season, and frankly this show as a whole, has been quietly building Spock toward the version we all know and love. Episode 2 put him through psychological horror and stripped his identity down. Episode 3 had him accidentally pour his whole heart out to a man he thought was a hallucination, which ended up planting the seed of the iconic Spock-Kirk friendship. Now that they're making him the lone real person in a ship full of puppets is the natural next step, because it basically means isolating him. This will force him to hold everything together alone, learning his own individual strength, but also how much humanity is actually under that Vulcan control. Also, it's gonna be comedy gold. I'd bet the emotional core of the episode is Spock having to loosen up, get silly, and have to interact with these puppet versions of his friends on their level in order to save them. Frankly, the whole episode can end up being a slapstick comedy, but that doesn't mean that it can't also be a character study in Spock's development. I think this next episode can be a fan fave, but I still fully expect this to be divisive. I'm sure there's tons of people who already think that Strange New Worlds doing a puppet episode means that the show has totally lost the plot, and I can understand that. After all, the season's already been accused of tonal whiplash, and this is the whiplashiest it gets. But remember, the musical episode sounded ridiculous on paper too. Sure, it remains divisive to this day, but the amount of love it got was completely deserved, because this brand new format was in service of the characters. Just like how the black and white color was part of the actual story in this episode. The same thing applies to the puppets. The producers have actually said this episode was harder to make than anything they've ever attempted, including the animated Lower Decks crossover, which tells you they took the craft of it seriously. I think it'll ultimately turn out better than the skeptics fear, a funny but weirdly heartfelt hour, and I think after 4 seasons, Strange New Worlds has earned the benefit of the doubt on these swings. If you want to look at the director and the crew side of things, it's Jordan Canning, who directed the show's lighter material like Charades, and who's actually worked on Fraggle Rock, which means this is someone who with real puppet and real comedy pedigree. That's a good sign. I'd also keep an eye out for which puppets steal the show. Word is, Pelia Puppet was the cast's favorite, so Carol Kane's felt counterpart might be a highlight in the episode. Of course, now that we're almost at the halfway point, we gotta zoom into the rest of the season too. We've had 5 episodes, all of which are 5 completely different genres, but the thing that I keep coming back to is that these aren't just random whims to make someone point at the screen. Each and every one of them has focused on character growth and development. Like, the premiere had dinosaurs, yeah, but it also sets up Pike's grief and hints to the time travel theme we knew would show up. The horror episode was all about Spock and La'an, while also hinting at something that will haunt Kirk for decades. The comedy episode fixed the rivalry between Ortegas and Scotty, and also laid the foundation for Kirk and Spock. And now this monochromatic hour is pushing Una toward command. So even a puppet episode, I think, is going to end up something like this. And from the synopsis, my guess it's another Spock-focused piece, inching him closer and closer until he's completely the pointy-eared man who stole every scene he had in the original series. The bigger picture, though, is what's really important. After all, this is the penultimate season, with only a short 6-episode final season left after it. And that final run is basically just to hand the Enterprise over to a young James T. Kirk. So the back half of the season has to pause its genre adventures so we can head towards that handoff without it feeling forced. The finale is an episode called Tomorrow's Enterprise, a clear-in version of the classic Yesterday's Enterprise, which I think might send the crew forward to glimpse the future we already know is coming. Things that will probably get a focus in episodes coming up include La'an's barely contained rage and her mixed DNA, Chapel's rule-bending potentially leading her down a canonically tragic path with Roger Corby, and of course that iconic Kirk and Spock bond, which the show is assembling brick by brick. But the immediate thing to consider is that next week is felt, foam, and one very exasperated Vulcan dealing with a hell of Muppets. I can't wait. So tell me down in the comments, are you all in on the puppet episode, or do you think this is the final straw on the show's experiments? And what do you make of this noir episode? Let us know your thoughts and theories down below. See you next time, bye!